which now gets into things like, for example, indexing choils. So here, Benchmade, indexing choil. Notice the separation of space between your index finger and then your middle finger, ring finger, and pinky. As you get into this, that can create a hot spot right there. Now it's positive lockup and something that's going to be, fairly grippy. But again, that's going to beat up on your hands, especially after prolonged use. Same with the tour knives, more tactical, having that separation of the fingers. Phobos, again, having that real sharp indexing choil. That will beat up on your hands over time. Beautiful knife, great blade shape. Actually, maybe one of the better for general camp tasks. The ability to do a lot, nice thickness. Could probably do without that hole just from a strength perspective, but I've never had any problems. But the long-term use, a little bit sharp. Again, I would prefer to not have an indexing choil and a more neutral handle that allows me to grip the knife, grip it easily, roll it around for some alternate grips, be able to do things like holding the knife this way for the scraping tasks and not beating up on your hand. That sharp point in some of these other designs, if I was to roll that knife around, that just doesn't work. In fact, I can barely grip the knife like that, and it literally will hurt where that point right there is going to dig into my hand. Well, I can use this for a prolonged period of time, holding the knife sideways, scraping that fuzz, trying to get my fire started, trying to, rip on that ferro rod and not beat up my hand. So again, not having that indexing choil, a big advantage, in my opinion, for a camp knife. And what about exposed pommels? Some knives with exposed pommel ends. It doesn't matter if it's a real big exposed pommel. In some cases, like for example on this tour, literally just like a little glass bead. Going back to the Benchmade exposed lanyard hole. I mean, I've been kind of guilty of this in a couple of cases myself. Again, exposed lanyard hole. Only notice that I intentionally rounded this significantly so that if I get into reverse grips, it's not going to beat up on my thumb. So in my opinion, not having the exposed steel is better. And some companies, and again, I'm going to go back and continue to praise Olive, doing a great job to round that out, where I can now use this knife for stabbing and splitting and cracking of the wood without beating up on my thumb. And many companies have done a fantastic job with rounding that out. Again, Work Tough Gear does a pretty nice job. That's a little sharper than I'd like, but not a big deal. Again, I mean, Reef doing an amazing job. Reef knives, rounding everything out, super comfortable, nice handle, oversized handle. Really good. And the other thing you'll notice about some of the knives that I gravitate towards, they actually wrap the G10 or micarta, the handle material, onto the guard, which then gives you that full thickness, including the handle material on the guard, so that when you're up against it, it doesn't beat up on your index finger, and in reverse grip, it doesn't beat up on your pinky as you're doing some of those stabbing tasks. Whereas other companies, that's completely exposed. Like here with Condor, I don't even know how I would necessarily go about stabbing because, that to me is not a well-pronounced guard. Taking the knife, flipping it over, you are absolutely going to mangle up your thumb trying to do those stabbing tasks. So even though I think it's a great knife and it has a lot of great things going for it, it does still have some deficiencies where I can't necessarily get into that reverse grip and get that quality stabbing going. And even with the Hydra knives, which is extremely stout and robust, again, getting down onto that tang, I'm going to beat up on my pinky. Rather, when you look at Olive knives, which has that very well-rounded and just softened guard, the ability to get on here, index well, get my thumb over the top, everything rounded, capable of doing that work very effectively. So again, from a total package perspective, I think you're starting to see why, in my opinion, this is really giving you a full suite of capabilities for all those different tasks, and very effectively. Now, granted, something like the exposed pommel is going to give you the ability to do some cracking, splitting, things like that, mashing things, hammering, tent pegs, whatever. I would still go as far as to say, if you had to, you could use this. Now, there is enough exposed tang there that you could definitely do that. Would it get kind of beat up and, start to kind of, get ratty? It would, but you could do it. So to me, this really does a better job of striking the balance, and I'm more apt to do stabbing tasks and cracking of the wood than I am to actually reverse the knife and do pounding. But again, you can do that, and you can do it effectively. And last but not least, the attachment construction method. So here, large, oversized, fluted pins. Very nicely done. Now, some companies opting to go more with a bolt-on design. Either way, I don't think it really matters. Some people are going to say they want to be able to take off the scales for various reasons. I don't necessarily see the need to do that. I've never in practice actually done that. I've never felt the need to clean my knife under the scales. There are some funny scenarios, like for example, the SE Laser Strike. If I was to take this apart, there's actually a kit inside here. So that's a fully skeletonized tang underneath, which is not nearly as robust as other designs. However, it does give you some storage. You can open this up with a flat washer or a coin or a flathead screwdriver. I don't necessarily care for that. Other companies like Phobos has fully skeletonized their tang for various reasons. Mostly specifically, and I would say the biggest advantage, fine-tuning the balance of the knife. And so here, we're not going to see the inside of this. And I can't honestly even tell you if that's completely full tang, but I would go as far as to say it's probably at least got a couple of holes in there to help balance this so that the knife feels nimble in the hand. So very well refined and fine-tuned knives will have some level of holes, well-rounded, and really to fine-tune the overall balance. And other knives are going to be a complete, thick, full tang all the way through. So at least in terms of the general construction, I would say just having a good quality connection method makes a big difference. Other knives are more of that overmolded, in this particular case, overmolded handles. They're not really going to fail, but in some cases, if you were hammering down, you could find that this does tend to slip down the tang of the knife, depending on how it's glued on or the quality of the adhesive. And so again, I would say that the construction method here, extremely robust, my ability to completely trust this knife. Now, I haven't spent too much time talking about steel. Steel is going to be a wild card depending on your environment, humidity, your need to field sharpen. I would go as far as to say something that's going to have good overall edge retention, good strength and resilience to all the hard use is, in my opinion, going to be the most important characteristics. Sharpening is important, but I don't tend to chunk an edge, so I like to really hone my edges and get something back to sharp with fine ceramic rods and a leather strop. Do I beat up on my edges from time to time? I do, but for me, I should be able to make it past the field for most general camp scenarios and durations without needing to do too much in the way of field maintenance. I do like Elmax steel. I think that is a perfect middle ground option. Some people like Nitro V, which again, Nitro V used on the Bushy. So a very similar steel here on the dark timber. But again, good quality stainless properties, yet, good quality hardness, edge retention, durability. Things like carbon steel are definitely going to patina. I'll just grab this Thomas Hacker knife. This is a combination of a carbon steel, but also has a little layer of nickel in there. But you can see that's definitely getting some patina. It can rust. You're going to need to oil your knives and keep them oiled. So definitely considerations. One steel that I think is a great option and I love, I put on my camp cleaver. So again, my Shanzhou Rhino cleaver, 14C28N, which I really like that steel. Strikes the balance between corrosion resistance, toughness, edge retention, very, very good. Generally speaking, I haven't had any problems with it. I don't find wavering edges. Really, really great in terms of my capability of keeping this sharp. So again, you kind of need to strike the balance between more of a carbon steel, something that's going to need a little bit more oiling and moisture, really careful around moisture is what I'm going to say. Careful around salt, things that would patina the blade or rust the blade, versus steel that's going to be more stainless in terms of its characteristics. So a little bit of a wild card in terms of the steel, but I would also go as far as to say Elmax, can't go wrong. Fantastic option and offering from Olive. And last but not least, well, the Sheath. A knife is just a knife, but how do you carry it? You're not just going to throw it in your pocket. A good quality ride is going to make or break your user's experience. So here, having a quality Kydex, universally spaced eyelets is a big deal. This gives me the ability to use many different types of clips. And if you look at the best sheaths, they are going to have literally standard space eyelets and the ability to leverage different types of attachments. So very flexible and versatile depending on your needs. Now, leather can be great, but if you get a real bonesy leather like this on that Join the Navy knife, this is terrible. I mean, a horrible leather sheath, very, very poorly done. I really do prefer sheaths without straps for a big reason. Going to this Hella knife, you can see that this strap, every time I need to withdraw the knife, if I don't want to cut through that strap, I literally need to take that strap, move it out of the way, and now I'm potentially exposing my fingers while I withdraw the knife. To me, that just doesn't work well. It's not safe, and especially in the camp environment where you may be in less of a controlled scenario. Whereas a better leather sheath is going to be a deep ride pouch sheath with no straps at all. This knife is not really going to come out here as long as you don't, violently shake it. Most of the time you're going to be right side up, and this is deep enough that you can extract the knife, but it's still going to sit in there nicely. So I prefer a good deep ride leather sheath, and you'll see that Reef has done an awesome job with that. We're extremely deep ride all the way down, and that's going to do a nice job, again, to protect your hands, keep it safe, yet keep that knife riding right where you need. And maybe the best of all of these, well, here you can see on this Contigo from Julio Diaz, the leather sheath here. I mean, this thing is grippy, and it holds that knife extremely well. Very well fit, beautifully done. And other than leather, you kind of get into nylon, which is hit or miss. You definitely want multiple points of retention, lots of lashing points and flexible, but at the same time, not quite as premium of a feel. So in my opinion, probably the best way to go, stay away from plastic molded sheaths. They're effective and for the types of knives that they're good for, but just not the best. Crappy plastic sheaths, this SOG, terrible sheath. Minimal retention, barely holding on to the knife. You kind of do want those intermediate eyelets. It's just weird looking. It is light and thin, I guess, but again, minimal in terms of the retention. To me, what is absolutely the best, a good quality Kydex sheath that's not only extremely well fit, perfectly fit, not going anywhere, no rattle, standard spacing, the ability to add any attachments, but beyond that, fine tune and dial in your retention with this screw, drainage hole. As long as you don't get this extremely cold or leave it in the baking sun in the window of your vehicle, you shouldn't have any problems. Moisture resistant, which is fantastic, and the ability to maintain your knife in a very clean fashion. So all in all, in my opinion, this Kydex is the perfect way to go. And so with that, guys, man, what a rundown. I hope you enjoyed that. I know there are so many other pieces to this conversation. I tried to catch as many as I could. Other considerations, we didn't talk about price. We didn't talk about availability, custom work, collectability, warranty, reputation, the fizz factor. There are so many other things that go into this, but I just really wanted to talk about the features of a knife that make it the best camp knife. And of all of these, and even though there's some great models and some excellent runner-up, I really have to say that from an overall package, the total number of features, the design elements, and the execution, all of Knives Arbor really stands out from the crowd. Of course, use in the field will prevail, but from a design perspective and overall kind of on paper look, this is one impressive knife. So all in all, some great blades here, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Leave all your comments below. Thank you for watching Outer Limitless Blades. And if you like this content, please do me a favor. Check out my Outer Limitless family of channels. Outer Limitless, which is my primary gear, outdoor hiking, camping, backpacking. Outer Limitless Blades here, all the sharp and pointy things. Outer Limitless 2, which covers the tactical and firearm side of things. And Outer Limitless Lights, which is indoor and outdoor lighting, camp lighting, headlamps, you name it. That's the Outer Limitless family of channels. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.